To have passion in life is everything.
What's your Everest?
Oh,
Is it
yeah.
that 200-inch buck?
They just look so impressive when they're wide.
Especially running away.
Welcome to this week's episode of Eastmans Elevated.
It's like a think tank for outdoor activity.
Sounds exactly like my hunting. Just always thinking about it, always trying to evolve it and make it better.
Here's your host, Brian Barney.
Hey, all you savages, you're listening to Eastman's Elevated with Brian Barney. Look at that. Thought of a new intro. I was getting bored, 20 in a row, and they all start the same way. I got to get more creative at the beginning. So I got a new one this week. Stay tuned for my creative process in the weeks to come and see what I can come up with. But today on the podcast, Eastman's Elevated, I have on Ryan Lampers. And Ryan Lampers, man, he's just a great guy and a super public land hunter. He had a great 2016, and it wasn't by accident. The guy works really hard at his map study and his planning and his nutrition and his fitness, and then he's just an animal in the mountains. So really fun to talk to this guy. Sometimes I wonder if I'm putting out this podcast for everybody else or putting it out for me. I gain so much knowledge talking to these good hunters out there, and I having these conversations with these guys and finding similarities and then also differences, in our thought process and in our hunting, and it's going to improve my hunting, tenfold. Hopefully, improving your guys's as well. The sponsor for today's show is Yeti Coolers. Yeti coolers, they're just the greatest cooler ever made. Now, I wish I owned one. I'm gonna get one for this next year. They keep ice so long, like instead of having a block of ice last 3 or 4 days, you get 10 days out of it. And I never thought I'd be a high-end cooler guy, but now I can see a need for it, especially on these hunts where you're going and you're trying to keep your food for days. And then also, if you harvest an animal, putting it in the cooler. One of the neatest features that guys don't talk about is that it's a bear-proof container. And so anywhere in the national forest or the wilderness where you have bears, you have to store your food in a food-safe container. And in your truck doesn't count, and the back of your truck doesn't count, coolers don't count, and your wall tent doesn't count. But what does is a Yeti cooler. So you're either out in the middle of the night with a headlamp trying to hang your food up in a tree 20 feet and 10 feet away from any branches, or you just lock it up in a Yeti cooler and you're good to go. So I think that's a really good feature of their coolers that is going to really help me in the woods. At Eastman's, we've got the mule deer issue coming up in the Eastman's Hunting Journal. So I've got an article in there that I wrote that's a really good article that I'm psyched to come out with. It's about hunting high-pressure mule deer. Also, Brandon Mason has a good one in there, outside the box mule deer, so it should be a great issue. Looking forward to it. So I've been talking long enough. Let's get this thing started with Ryan Lampers. Enjoy. Okay, I'm live with Ryan Lampers. Ryan, how are you?
Man, I'm good, Brian. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
Excellent.
Well, yeah, man, you had a heck of a 2016. I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed. I just kind of found you through social media this year, and then I got on there and I liked the pictures that you were putting out, and all of a sudden you just killed this monster buck out of Nevada with your bow and arrow. That was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, man, it was a great season. Couldn't have been more happy how it all turned out. The Nevada was kind of the beginning of it in August there. And yeah, shoot, what a way to kick it off with a great buck, big old 30-inch buck. And everything from there just seemed to pan out this year. I was really, really feeling good about going into this season, conditioning wise. And I feel like I did a lot of homework and was ready for it. And lo and behold, it really worked out. Just a great season.
Man, hard work pays off, right?
Yeah, that's how it's supposed to work, right? And it definitely did this year.
So you do all the train to hunts, and then you're really serious about your fitness and nutrition. You've got a new podcast out that you're doing, Hunt Harvest Health, which is a great podcast and fills a really good niche in the hunting industry. But you really focus a lot on your fitness and on your nutrition.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, me and my wife have the podcast out, and we're just trying to focus on, maybe mixing it up with nutrition and foods and health. And, we're really aware of where our bodies are and how we want them to feel and this and that. And nutrition is huge. And, we like growing our own food and preparing it and putting it up and all this kind of thing. And we figured, why not talk about it? Seems to be a lot of folks out there that are curious or want to learn about it and, at the same time, mix it up with some hunting stories and a little hunt talk here and there. So, but yeah, the training with Train to Hunt, that's huge for me. I really enjoy it. I've gotten into it this year and, man, I can't express how much I'm into it now. It's almost like a whole new hunting season.
Wow, crazy.
The first race is coming up in May and I got another nice good run in today, a good lifting session and just hammering away and anticipating some really hardcore races and just I love that challenge of it, and I just love the guys that are involved in it. So it really works out well with my lifestyle.
Good for you. And that it's amazing what a little bit of competition does, doesn't it? It's just like and not that you have to win every race and it's all to be better for hunting season, but you almost start looking forward to and training and making sure you're getting your runs in and you're lifting and getting everything in so you can perform well at your training for hunting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's what it's all about. It all comes down to, where you're going to be at come August or September or whenever you start. So, I don't see any drawback to, extending your training out throughout the year. And what Train to Hunt does, just the way it's set up is, you got to be training right now. You got to be training in January, February, March, because that first race comes along and, man, I don't want to embarrass myself. I want to be ready for it. I want to compete with these guys that are doing it. And they're, these guys train. Some of these guys, they're into CrossFit or they're just, hardcore bow hunters that put a lot of time in the mountains. And, you as well as I know, those guys can handle some weight and they can shoot. So, you just gotta, I really love the challenge of it and getting involved and it's just a perfect fit for me. So I love it.
Man, where's that first one coming up in May?
Nevada, but it's Nevada isn't the first one. I think Oregon comes after that for me. I'm going to do a couple of them this year. They're talking about doing one up in Alaska, and I really want to go up and travel up there and do that as well. So I just think it'd be a great venue up there, and you get to see a little bit of Alaska and see some new scenery and bring the family and just be a blast. But Nevada first and then Oregon and like I say, hopefully Alaska.
Wow, how cool. All right, well, I'm gonna hit you up. I want to join you on one of these things. It looks great. It looks like they try to put enough real hunting scenarios and real hunting training into it to where, all your training is to be better at hunting season, but it looks like these things really prepare you for that. And the outcome, your 2016 speaks for itself. You killed 3 giant bucks, and we talked about that one in Nevada early, but then you killed one in Washington, your home state, which isn't known for big bucks. But boy, that was a gorgeous heavy buck too, kind of in a late season, right?
It was. Yeah, definitely. Like you said, Washington isn't really known for giant bucks. Nobody comes here from out of state. It's not one of the top dogs. It's not Colorado, Montana, Idaho, or Nevada, Utah. There's so many better states that people talk about. And hey, that doesn't bother me. Not having any out-of-state hunters is great. But, we're a small state. We've got a core area that's pretty big. We got a lot of really nice mule deer in there. It doesn't get looked at, I don't feel, as much as other states, even, with us resident guys. And I don't know what it is, but we've got not the biggest bucks, but man, we can pull some really nice, upper 20s and, heavy dark horn bucks out of there. And it's more of an alpine setting. It's not the wide open above tree lines type hunting that you see in Colorado. I know you're real familiar with that, but it's just, extremely different. You're getting up as high as you can, but that may only be 6,500 to 7,500 feet. And, boy, if you can find a peak at 8,000, you're pretty, you're up there for Washington. But yeah, it's avalanche chutes and openings and, and yeah, I mean, we just every year we do like a lot of guys do, and we put a lot of time and effort into our summer scouting. And here we know we got to have several areas that we know there's some good bucks, and if it doesn't pan out in one, you got to have another one on call and head straight for it. It's not that easy to find big open basins where you've got a lot of bucks. So you really got to work at it in this state. But it's been good to me and a few of my other buddies that do it, and definitely got areas that you can get away and just not see people. No problem with that.
Yeah, well, there's a reason for it. It's tough hunting over there. I mean, you guys, it reminds me, and we've talked before, but it reminds me of like northwest Montana, where you can't get that high up in the mountains, but they are gnarly, rugged mountains. They're like coastal mountains, and so they get a bunch of rainfall and a bunch of snow, so they grow just a ton of underbrush down low, which the underbrush, you look at the mountain range on Google Earth and it looks fairly small, but you get in there and it's a different story. You're fighting underbrush and you'll fight for an hour or 2 hours to make it a mile, and then you're just trying to get up into that high country, and once you get up in there, you pretty much scare the hell out of yourself with all the cliffs and there's a lot of timber too, and so those bucks are always bedding where you can't see them. So it's a huge challenge and quite a feat, and probably a lot of the reasons you're as good a hunter as you are is from hunting those tough mountains of Washington.
Yeah, it's just like you say, it is thick, and I think that's kind of an advantage. And kind of the trick is get off trail, and when you get off trail, you're dealing with that underbrush, and you may have to cut miles through that stuff and try to get to an open area where you've got some vegetation that the deer are feeding on, and you got areas where they are, but it's a struggle, man. Definitely. It's tough country, really good bear country. We get a lot of black bears here. I love chasing black bears in the fall, and we got a lot of berries up there, but boy, that same country that we're chasing bears in, that's the country that we're chasing these big old muleys in as well. So yeah, definitely thick, and you got to put some distance between you and the trail, and that just keeps anybody from going back there. You don't get hikers back there getting off trail and busting through that scrub very often, so it works.
No, they might die back there.
People get lost a lot around here, that's for sure. But people just don't venture too far away from the trails and trailheads.
Yeah, gnarly cool country, and it seems like the tougher a hunt is, the more it means to you when you are successful or you do accomplish your goal, and also there's something to be said about being by yourself back in there, not seeing other hunters, and even if the deer populations are low, you cover country, and that's another tough thing that I think is the same in Washington as it is northwest Montana, and you've hunted northwest Montana too. That gnarly rugged country, as it cliffs you out up high, you're not able to get on main ridge lines and cover 5, 6, 7 basins. Like you go up into a basin or a drainage, and you're really committed to that basin or drainage, no matter how much underbrush you fought or ridge lines you make. And most of the time, to get out of there, you got to back all the way out that drainage and then go all the way up the next drainage.
Yeah.
And that country just doesn't have the populations of deer, and so you're not finding 5 to 10 to 15 bucks in every drainage. You're finding one maybe every 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 drainages, which makes it really tough.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. I mean, you set your sights on a mature buck. You've kind of got an idea what you're looking for, and man, those are few and far between. And like you mentioned, northwest Montana, real similar to where we hunt in Washington here, and it's cliffs, and it's a struggle getting into these places, and like you mentioned, it's small little areas and pockets and avalanche chutes, and so yeah, a lot of guys don't focus their efforts on those places. They just as soon head east where the country's more open and more conducive to glassing and a little easier on you. But bucks grow old and die in that country, and I just prefer to hunt these low density areas and try to get that one monster out of there and not deal with people. You know as well as I do that bucks act differently when they just don't see people. When they've gone 3, 4, 5 years and they've just never had an encounter with a guy. Those are the bucks that we're going for, not the ones that have been pressured, from year one. And it's just a different animal. And for
Yeah.
bow hunting, it's like that's what you want, right? That's just picture perfect is finding those areas where they've never seen a person. It's kind of no man's land, if you will.
Yeah, you're so right. Bucks do act different, but in today's day and age, we're always, we're having to hunt different units, and even you hunting that tough country, it had to be totally different once you went to Nevada and you saw the high populations of deer, but you also had high hunting pressure, and you were able to find that giant. You said he was 30-inch. Boy, what a beast of a buck. That was just a great one in there. And that was your first year hunting Nevada. And so you
Yeah.
did, all your prep work, your physical conditioning, and then you did a bunch of map study. And then I think you'd also mentioned that, you'd met some guys from Hunt to Fit that gave you some good tips as well.
Yeah, I met some guys down there in Nevada this past season, and this was before I knew that I had drawn the tag. And so I met them down there last spring, and then lo and behold, found I drew the tag. And shoot, I used those guys for really good intel. I picked their brain and probably bugged them a little bit too much, and just asking questions about what they see at different trailheads. And like you said, I did a ton of map study and research and Google Earth and everything that we do. And that kind of paints you a picture, but it really doesn't get you your eyeballs on the country. It doesn't put boots on the ground. So I talked to guys down there and just soaked up everything I could, from the outfitters to just guys that have hunted these regions. And man, that just gave me a starting point. I kind of knew where, okay, well, these guys have seen, 10 cars at this trailhead. That's not a trailhead I want to go to. So I got a ton of information from these folks, and it really helped me. But yeah, Nevada was completely different. It was a little spooky going down there, and I've never hunted terrain like that. I've never hunted high desert, sagebrush, and it's just Quakies and completely different than what I'm used to up here in the Northwest. And so it was a good challenge for me, and man, I was super excited about doing it. Actually, went straight from Train to Hunt event down in Utah, and from there the next day I drove right over to Nevada and got after it and started chasing bucks right away. And yeah, like you said, there's a ton of deer down there. It's completely different. You might see 20, 30 bucks a day down there, versus up here you might see a couple few and maybe one good one, that you're going for. And so it does open it up. But, the thing about Nevada is you kind of know there's some good ones around. It does have a lot more pressure, which kind of puts you in that mode of, all right, now where are guys going to focus? Where's the easy hunts? Obviously there's a lot of bucks here. Guys are seeing them. Probably not the place to be. Probably not going to grow any, old 5.5-year-old plus bucks. And so you're forced to look for those kind of no man's land areas again, off the main ridges and down in the holes and more timbered areas where bucks can grow old. And that's kind of what I did. And man, it really worked for me.
Yeah, boy, I gotta say, you're an animal. You went to the Train to Hunt and then straight to your hunt in Nevada. That was a grueling, tough hunt that you went on down there. But no, you make a really good point of finding those animals, off the beaten path. And we've talked about it before, but you got to put your blinders on. You see a lot of smaller, more immature bucks, 2s, 3s, and 4s, and even some bucks that tempt you, that are on the edge of being a shooter. But in that country, I think I told you that hunt I went on in Nevada, I probably had to pass up 50 or 60 bucks before I finally started to find the zones where the bigger bucks were hanging, where you were finding the more mature bucks, the 4, 5, 6-year-old deer. And like you say, they're down off the main ridge line. They're down these spur ridge lines, and they're down in more cover in tough country to glass, and they're just off the beaten path. And so no matter what country you're hunting, you got to get off that beaten path and find those little hidden away gems of country where those bigger bucks can grow old.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just happened to get lucky. I found this buck kind of like you mentioned. It was off ridge, in a spot where it was a small spot. It was a small basin off of all the main basins where, I figured most guys over the years would be, more pressed to look at. And there was bachelor groups like crazy, on the one side of the range. And I just figured more guys are going to focus their efforts. There's a lot of 24, 25 inch bucks running around and, most bow hunters are, man, that is great. So, I just felt like I kind of wanted to get away from that and maybe find a loner somewhere or a small group of real mature bucks. And that's kind of what I did. And, man, one of the first bucks I saw was the biggest buck. And that's the one that I ended up, going after and got really close to getting him right away. And then, boy, it didn't happen. And I lost him and didn't relocate that buck for another 6 days before I ended up killing that monster. So it just really worked out well. It was a real tough hunt, and man, I'm glad I didn't kill him the first time I saw him, because having 6 more days out there to just really cover it, look it over, know what I was what I was getting into, and all these adjoining basins that I was just searching out for this buck. I got an opportunity to see a lot more country, a lot of elk and cougar, and just had a lot more experiences, the longer I was there, and it just worked out. It couldn't have been a better hunt, just how it went.
Man, crazy. So you made a play after this buck and then didn't kill him, and then he disappeared and you didn't see him for 6 days. And so you had your mind set on a next level buck, and you had seen this buck. You knew he was 30. He had deep forks. He had it all. It was the buck you were going to kill, or one like him. And so you found him, had a stalk that didn't work out, and then you spent the next handful of days just looking for him in that basin and adjoining basins, trying to relocate him.
Exactly. Yeah. When I first saw this buck, he, man, I thought I had a great play on him, and it's kind of one of those situations where it was early in the hunt. I see this monster, I phone scope him, I take some photos, I blow him up, I'm looking at him, I'm like, man, that's a good buck. Am I really seeing this for what he is? And I was like, gosh, I'm going to kick myself if I don't go after that giant, even though it was early. And I did make a play on him that night. Man, I got close. I got within 55 yards and right above him. Everything worked out just great. The wind was just ripping through the Quakey, so I was able to get down on him and ended up having to sit on him for 3 hours and left all my gear up top with no water. It was just one of those situations. And he came through, didn't give me a shot, and kind of fed up and over this little finger ridge. And I had to back all the way up to the top of that basin, move over, relocate him. And I realized he just moved up and over that finger ridge just a little bit before he bedded down. So I went back down into that basin, went down, got right up on the boulder. It's like a semi-sized boulder, and put me 55 yards right above him. And man, I was at full draw, and finally when he decided to stand up, he stood up, and I did not have a shot. I just had one Quakey where he got up, and it just wasn't a good shot. And so he ended up boogering out of there and bounded away. And I thought, oh my gosh, I blew it, and so I backed out, and yeah, like you mentioned, I spent the next 6 days just scouring that country and looking in every basin, down side to side. And I ended up seeing some, another really, really good buck. And this other buck was well over 200 inches. And he was another buck that I would have loved to get and have opportunity at, but he just never gave me a spot to put a stock on him. He was bedding in some Quakies that there was just no way it was going to happen. And so I just kept going back and spent, I don't know, man, Brian, I don't know how many hours I spent glassing this basin, just hoping he would come back. And he did. 6 days later, I was at the very top on this ridge and glassing down in there. And man, lo and behold, he came and he took the exact same path when I saw him that first night. And he was feeding across, and he ended up feeding all the way over and got into that same exact bed. And so, that made it easy on me. I knew the exact route I had to take, and I was going to take a little bit different approach down below that boulder. And that's what I did, and had a real similar uphill wind that was just, it was causing that shake in the Quakies where it was pretty nice and loud. And so it wasn't it just made stalking all that much easier. And I got down in there and I got within 40, and that was as far as I could get, and waited him out. And when he stood up, I drilled him, and that was it. And man, it all worked out.
Oh man, that is so awesome. Yeah. Geez, and it's crazy that buck came back to the same spot even after spook, but they just get so familiar. They've got like this prime living where they live, and they live within about a square mile, it seems like, and they just kind of live in these trees, and they come out in these meadows, and they may have a circuit of feeding or a circuit of bedding, but they kind of like that same area. And then when they get spooked, they've got like this secondary living they go to, and they kind of more hidden and more secluded, and it's where they go when they're pressured or during danger hunting season, and then pretty soon, like you say, he thinks the coast is clear and comes right back to that same spot. And how cool is that when you stalk a buck in a location where you've stalked before? It's like the terrain, the exact approach, how you're going to do things different, what's quiet, where there's loose rocks, where you're going to place your feet, where you're going to get a shot, what you can see from your shooting lanes or your spot. But I love it when a buck will bed in the same spot, and usually if I get a second chance at him, you can make it happen. But man, what an awesome buck and an awesome story. I have to ask, I've hunted Nevada 3 or 4 years. The lightning is notoriously bad there. Did you get any lightning in Nevada?
I did, man. I did. I had a really good time one day. Man, I was blazing up a ridge, and gosh, I saw the storm coming, and I didn't know what it was going to be. I just knew some wind was coming in, and figured, well, I'm just going to kind of duck on one side of this big old boulder. There's like 3 boulders on the top of this ridge, and remember, I was up 10,400 feet or something like that, and I didn't think much of it. And so I'm kind of hunkered up against this rock, and there's a nice little overhang, and I'm taking a break and just going to wait this thing out. And eventually, it's over there, but I was like, man, I'm bored, so I'm going to get up and I'm going to cruise this ridge up to where I want to get to, which happened to be the basin that I ended up getting that buck in. And so, man, as soon as I stood up, I started hearing some rumbling, and I took maybe 10 steps, and right in front of me, the second rock on that ridge, which is lower than me, got exploded with a lightning bolt. And this is 100 feet in front of me. This is 30 yards in front of me. And man, I jumped up. I think I did a pirouette in the air. I dropped my bow. I blasted down the mountain, and just dropped probably 1,500 feet in a couple seconds, it felt like. But yeah, that was about as scary as it gets. And man, the hair on the back of my neck was standing straight up. There was like energy all over the mountain, and man, it was just like I just happened to be looking exactly where that bolt struck.
Man.
But yeah, I felt pretty lucky to escape that, without getting blasted, because I was higher than that rock was. And it just happened to hit that rock instead of me. And I don't know how it did, because I was holding my bow at the same time, which is an aluminum bow. And yeah, so I ended up blasting down and getting my gear on and sitting out about it was quite a while. The rain came in after that, and it was just ripping all around me for a long time, and finally cleared out. But yeah, that woke me up for sure.
Man, that stuff's spooky, isn't it? You don't need too many of those those scenarios to happen to you to where you're really leery about lightning in that high country. It's just not to be messed with up there. Like you say, when you have storms in the valley and such, it's a lot of cloud to cloud lightning, but when you're up in that high country, it hits peaks, it hits ridge lines, it hits rocks, it hits rock outcroppings, and it'll just scare the heck out of you. And I've almost got, now I'm just super safe because I've been in so many bad scenarios. I've been in the dark on ridge lines and had to come down. I had one buddy of mine, Dan, hunting Colorado, and we were 12-6 or something, and skirted over to this vantage point looking at this back basin the day before season. And so we had skirted this big mountain that we had to skirt back around to come to camp. And all of a sudden these clouds and this fog came in, and it didn't even feel like a storm or anything. It just kind of felt like it was clouding up high, and the first lightning strike hit that mountain, maybe 100 yards above us, and just boom, all the way around you. And so
Yeah.
we started grabbing our gear and we started trying to make it around that mountain, and it was like the lightning was shooting at us. It was hitting all around us. And finally I told Dan, I said, we got to get off the mountain. We got to go now. Like your scenario where you ran 1,500 feet down, we took off straight down the mountain on a 50-degree slope, just trying to get the heck out of there. And then I said, we got to get down. We got to get down to that low depression down there in that group of trees. And so we're hustling to that. And then lightning hits those group of trees that we're running towards, you know. And at
Oh,
one
man.
point, we're sitting in a little ditch, you know, and Dan looks over at me white as a ghost. And Dan, he doesn't scare easy, you know. It takes about. He looked over at me and asked me if I knew CPR, and it gets that spooky in the high country where it just scares the heck out of you, where you just learn not to take those chances anymore. And
Yep.
like your scenario, that was one of the first lightning strikes was right around you, at least one of the
Right
first
there.
close ones.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I've been in a lot of those storms before, and if it would have been shooting around me before that, I would have blasted down the mountain well ahead of that. But just the fact that, I mean, I just stood up and there it was. That was the big crack, and it was just right there on the mountain I was standing on. And man, I mean, yeah, I've always feel, and the thing about it is just a big bald face. So there was no trees. It was like a couple of boulders and me. And, you know, I've been in a lot of those situations in Washington where you're up there and it is blasting all around you. And, but there's timber, you know, there's trees around and higher peaks. And I just feel a little safer. I don't know why. I shouldn't feel safer, but I do feel safer when I'm in that timber. And man, up on that bald face, I did not feel very safe. I was lucky to escape that one.
Yeah, well, I'm with you. I like, you know, anytime lightning comes for me, that's, you know, and I try to, you get to be almost a weatherman when you're in the high country because those storms roll in, you know, sometimes they'll roll in every day, every afternoon, sometimes earlier, sometimes later, and you got to really read the storms and you try not to take chances because you do watch it hit peaks and watch it hit ridge lines, you know, but yeah, you get to be a weatherman kind of reading the clouds coming in, and boy, that one kind of looks electric. Or in Nevada is super electric. That place is just the lightning just lights that place up. But I'm like you. I play it really safe, and I feel more comfortable in that timber, and I like to get down off the main ridge lines, definitely off the main ridge, but even the spur ridge lines, I get down off of those, and I like to find low spots, and I like to find groups of trees that I can kind of get in and ride out the storm, and then I feel pretty good about it. And I also like to camp in those spots too, and so it's really easy to camp on spur ridge lines, but there's nothing worse than a lightning storm in the middle of the night where you don't trust your tent set up.
No kidding. Yeah, and I had kind of been warned. I knew Nevada was like that, and I knew, you know, the country I was in, but and I had seen storms, you know, past ranges. When you're up there in Nevada, you can look across the valley and see the next range, you know, a long ways off. And I was seeing those ranges just get showered with lightning bolts, and you know, but that was the one storm that came through, just kind of snuck up on you, and that was that. But yeah, pretty spooky, man. Definitely learned a little bit there, and I will not be taking those dark clouds for granted from here on out.
No, I'm with you. Well, and those are the worst storms, is that one you were in where the storm almost forms around you and the first lightning strikes right on you. And I probably had a dozen storms that hit me like that, and you can't prepare for them. It's a lot easier to prepare when you hear the lightning and see it coming and hear the thunder. But when that storm forms right around you like that, that's tough to read and tough to call when that first strike's right around you. But it sounds like you did everything right. I think Nevada's just a pretty electric there.
It is, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I went back and I ended up getting some photos of the rock that it blasted. It kind of just left some lines on there, and I didn't know what it would do to that rock, and it kind of picked the whole upper shelf up a little bit and kind of shook it. And so I took some pictures of what that looked like. But man, every time I walked past that spot after that, the hair on the back of my neck just stood up. It was just energy. Yeah, it's pretty weird.
Mother Nature is amazing. So yeah, then you'd walk by that spot and look at it every time and have an eerie feeling right around it, huh?
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Well, and I've seen lightning pick a spot like that and then strike that spot 2 or 3 times in the same storm or the next storm. Like there's just something with a rock outcropping or a point, and it doesn't even have to be the high spot, but sometimes that lightning's just drawn to a spot like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm just not used to hunting those big wide open places, and here in Washington, you got big timber. Typically you got big timber where your camp is, or you easily can get to it fairly quickly. And it's just never been that big of a worry for me. Like I said, I've been in some nasty ones, but never one that hit that close. And now, obviously I'd treat things differently if I was hunting Colorado or ever get the opportunity to hunt Nevada again. And oh man, I will be, like you said, I'll be a weatherman from here on out.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. Yeah, like you say, just different terrains have different challenges, but it's part of what's fun, and that, not that lightning fun is fun, or not that having near-death experiences is fun, but there's something when you're out on your own wits, and you've got to keep yourself safe in those wildernesses and those mountains, and you've got to make the right decisions. But it's this visceral, experience that draws us in, where we, it's like all of a sudden, traffic isn't a problem, or your last paycheck, or your, taxes, or whatever it is, you just don't think about that. You have to focus on the right now, getting yourself safe from lightning, or,
Yeah.
not falling off a cliff. But that's part of the fun too, and part of what makes an adventure hunt. And we just try to get smarter as the years go on, and make better choices. And I made a ton of mistakes when I was younger with lightning. And so that's why I've learned, and I've almost gone the other way to where, I'm almost too paranoid now with lightning, but, it'll just make you that way with, like you say, those big open basins, nowhere to hide from it. You ride out a few of those and you think, I don't want to do that again.
Absolutely not. Yeah. Yeah. I think about, I mean, that's the challenge, right? That's why we love the solo hunts. And, at least I do. And there's always a challenge in it, and just keeping yourself alive in some of these situations we put ourselves in. And man, that's living. I think it's these cliffed out situations and lightning strikes, and man, every part of it, I dig it. It's great.
Well, and it looks like, you did a heck of a job in Washington. So you killed that buck in Nevada. I can't remember. You killed a monster buck in Montana, in the eastern part of the state, with high pressure. I was just so impressed by that buck. But I don't know if you killed that Washington buck. I think you killed that Washington buck next, right? And you had a
Yeah.
bunch of snowy, wet Washington weather, and that stuff can be dangerous too, and tough to survive in, and just tough mentally to keep yourself out there waiting for the storm to break so you can actually hunt and see something. That's got to wear on you too.
It does, man. You really gotta prepare your mind for it. And I just think that comes with experience. I've taken guys up there that just haven't hunted, their whole lives. And, there's certain situations where, whether it's beating through brush, trying to get, somewhere, a couple miles of underbrush will drive you crazy if you're not used to it or haven't done it, and learn to enjoy it. And just being alone, or being in situations where, the fog comes in and you are just pinned down, and you're just stuck there with your wits, and you got to have a good mental game going into some of these hunts. And that's how Washington was this year. Fortunately, I was up there with a buddy of mine, and so I had some company. But man, just a grinded out type hunt where we thought we were in for like the most ideal situation. We had a big storm come through, 15 inches of snow dumped, and then it looked like after that we were just going to get 1 to 3 inches, and that was going to be it, and it was going to clear up. Well, that didn't happen. We got that big dump, went in right after that, and man, the fog settled in, and we were pinned down in a basin for a long time, just kind of waiting for that fog to lift. And I thought, it's going to push a lot of these bucks down into here, and it's just a perfect migration. And then it started snowing, man. We got another 15 inches of snow, and it was just brutal. So we had to climb out of that hole and drop a ton of elevation, and get back down to where we started seeing some bucks. And you just basically get advantage, and you get these little windows, and you're just praying for like 5 minutes of open, through the clouds, and you can get, an opening to look at the hillsides. And geez, it was like few and far between a couple of those days where you're just wishing for something to look at. And yeah, it just grinds on your mind. And yeah, that hunt ended up having a little window, saw some deer in this spot, and picked out quite a few little bucks, and ended up locating a good one, and ended up the next day had to drop a bunch of elevation and get down in there, and ended up getting in on him, and actually it put us all the way down at snow line, so we had to dump down quite a ways, and ended up getting that thing. And yeah, just for Washington, that's kind of what we shoot for, a mid-20s, 26-inch buck that's, heavy and good frame and all that. And that's really that's the ideal buck for Washington.
Yeah, no, that was a great one, and you made some really good points talking about it, but I think to be successful, you have to embrace the grind, embrace the suck. Like, it's not going to be fun all the time, and to be successful, you have to be able to endure those times, and whether it's lightning or hunting pressure, long miles, or it's the weather, it's the snowstorm that you got to ride out for multiple days. Like I really attribute most of my success, or a lot of my success, is just that mental toughness, just that never give in, that never quit. And I think the same thing's true for you, listening to you talk about these hunts and seeing the success that you had. But it's just this mental toughness, this embrace the grind, embrace the suck, and you get a lot of that from experience hunting and giving in early and going home and going, man, why did I come home early? Why I could still be up there, and it's tough up there, and it seems like that you're never going to accomplish your goals, and you come down early and you just kick yourself, and you do that and you go, I'm never doing that again. And so you just get tougher and tougher, and also I get a lot of toughness, as I'm sure you do, is from your training, pushing the envelope in your training. It hurts, and you don't want to run another mile, you don't want to run another 10 miles, but you make yourself do it mile after mile, step after step, one after the other. And it's that mental toughness that you sharpen and harden. And then when you get on one of those tough hunts, like, you're prepared for it. You can endure the tough points of the hunts to see the fun and exciting points when you get a stalk and when you do get a shot or get a chance at a buck, and so I think that's an important lesson is successful hunters, you got to embrace the grind.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've said this to a lot of guys before, and, we pass a lot of bucks sometimes going into an area, just because I want the hunt to be hard. I don't want it to be easy. That's the last thing I want. When I go into my room and I'm looking at antlers, I don't want to look at that buck that I got on the first day and tell that story. I want to tell the story of the one that I was in there for 10 days and I got him on the last day, last half hour. And man, Brian, I mean, I don't know why it happens, but it just happens that way. There's so many hunts that you grind it out and grind it out and grind it out, and it works out in the end. It works out on day 6 or 7 or 10. And I think, over the years, you've had a couple experiences like that, and you just get to know that, it could happen at any point. You could get that one opportunity at any point. And that goes for elk hunting and deer hunting as well. And I think some guys, they get pushed out of the mountains, or they get pulled out like a magnet just because they get that impression it's just not going to happen. But I think if you've done it enough and you've grounded out a hunt just like we have, I think you come to the point where you're like, yeah, it will happen, because it's happened so many times in the past where I grinded it out and it happened in the end. And that's what I look forward to. I don't want to shoot a buck off the road on my way into a hunt. I want to hit that trailhead. I want to get as far back as I can and put in the time, and I want the challenge of it. That's what makes the hunt, and that's what makes it exciting. For sure, for me anyway.
Oh man, that is so killer and so well said. No, you're absolutely right. And it's wild. Like, sometimes on hunts, and I keep the faith just like you do, and I know I just need a sliver opportunity and I just need one chance. But sometimes it just feels like it's not going to happen. But, I've been there so many times, like you say, that it's like I just keep grinding and I keep going, and it comes together. And it's just like time after time, like it just happens for me. And it seems like such this far-fetched, maybe I've messed up stalks, maybe I missed a shot, maybe who knows. But you just keep pushing and keep grinding, and then all of a sudden, like magic, it just comes together for you, which is just wild that you say that, because I have that same feeling sometimes.
Like magic, man. That's a good way to put it, because that's exactly how I feel. It's just like I just have a feeling like it's going to happen. I know it doesn't look like it's going to happen right now, and things are crappy and the weather sucks and haven't been seeing deer, but I think I'm in the right area, and I know there's good bucks here, and And that's all it takes. And it just seems to happen in the end. And I don't know how many times it has happened that way, but it's been a lot. And, both, like I said, both deer and elk. And it just, bam. I mean, with elk especially, it seems like with elk, especially calling them in, it can happen. And you get to be depressed, and 30 seconds later, you just arrowed a bull. And with deer, it doesn't happen like that. But, it usually, like I said, there's so many times and experiences I've had over the years that it comes together in the end. And I can't explain it, but It is like magic.
It is. No, you're absolutely right. No, that's a super good point. Yeah, no, I like to hear that from another successful hunter. Yeah, so another spot where you had complete magic was Eastern Montana this year. I gotta say, I was so impressed by that buck. It was I hunt Eastern Montana a lot, and I really like it, and I work really hard at it out there. You came from Washington and drove over, and you have a bunch of experience in Eastern Montana. You've hunted it before, and you've killed some good bucks out there. But that one you killed this year, so heavy and palmated and deep forked, and that's not the norm for Eastern Montana. But you just killed a monster in there. What was your secret to success to finding a good spot in there, in a high pressure area? Because it's a general tag for all us residents, non-residents. I mean, it feels like there's thousands of guys driving those roads out and through there. How did you find success?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Eastern Montana is kind of funny. It is high pressure. There's a lot. It's easy access for the most part. There's a lot of roads, and it's pretty wide open, so guys can glass long distances. But kind of and like you mentioned, I've hunted it quite a few times in the past. I've put a lot of time to northwestern Montana, just because I really enjoy that low density stuff. But man, there's something that draws me over to that east side that it just pulls me over there. I love it. I love that open, coulee country. And, every year I feel like I get better at hunting it. And yeah, so kind of how this year went on that is me and a buddy, we kind of had this idea, wanted to just pick some spots on a map, find some public land, BLM land that I've never looked at before. So that's what I did. And so I spent a ton of time on the map, and I kind of spread some areas out and put X's on there, and we hopped in the rig and headed that way. And first spot that I was looking at, I kind of wanted to check a few spots off and kind of save the best for last, and that's what I did. And so we checked out the first spot, and man, I was seeing some nice bucks, pretty good amount of bucks. It was during the rut, so they were moving around and made that fairly easy. And, I just looking on the map, it looked like an area that I could get away from people and might have some opportunities at some holdover bucks and seeing some pretty decent bucks. But when I got there and we put a few miles on and camps on our back and got as far in as we could, just didn't have that feeling like this would be an area that's going to have some really old gray-faced bucks. It just didn't have that type of feel to it. It didn't have the perfect terrain that I was looking for. It didn't have as much timber. It was a little too wide open. So we kind of buggered out of there and headed to spot number 2. And spot number 2, what I'd done is I'd kind of picked this area amongst. It was a big block of public land, and then it had a lot of private land surrounding it. And there was a small access that I figured out that I was going to be able to get in there. And what I was counting on or banking on was that the private access, people weren't going to have access to it. Maybe the road, nobody was going to let anybody in there. There was a few roads that would go through the private stuff, but I was kind of just hoping that nobody had access to it. Well, we woke up and started in there and quickly realized, man, somebody's allowing people in off their private. So that piece kind of got blown up pretty fast. I was starting to see rigs bouncing around back there, and great country. But, when you're looking at a map and you're looking on Google Earth, you can only do so much. And until you really get eyeballs on it and boots on the ground, you just can't get, the entire picture. And so we picked up, drove quite a few hours beyond that and hit the next spot. And this is the spot that I really had my hopes set on. And no matter what, I wanted to get here and at least check it out. And so I got everything loaded up and planned on, basically a week's worth of time back there. And and man, covered a ton of country, and it was an area where there was no roads and really limited ability to access it, and got in there, and boy, crossing that country is not as easy as it looks. You got big deep coulees and timbered coulees and things that you just can't see when you look across it, and it all looks flatter on Google Earth. So once we got there, it was time consuming to just get to the spot that I felt could carry a big buck, carry some big holdover bucks. And so we finally got in there, and man, lo and behold, it started finding some critters, and we got into some coulee country where had a little bit more timber, where I figured it might suck in some of those older age class bucks, and had some deep gorges, and I knew that nobody'd be back in here checking out this spot, and sure enough, it kind of came together that way. There was nobody back there. We were not seeing boot prints back there. So, found this buck. He skylined himself. Boy, it was a long ways away, and made a play on him. Ended up getting him, and holy smokes, yeah, for that country to get a big, heavy dark horn buck like that was not expected, because I've chased bucks all over eastern Montana, and I've yet to find one that's really heavy and really dark horned. And man, he must have just picked out a spot down in that coulee in that timber that nobody ever looked at this buck, and he got to be pretty old and just not typical. He looked like a buck that you would find in northwest Montana. He had those dark horns and real heavy bases, and not something I would have ever expected to get on those eastern plains.
Yeah, man. Oh, what a deer. That thing was just beautiful. There was so many good tips and tactics that were hidden in that story about eastern Montana. You're just doing everything the right way. You're studying your maps in Google Earth, and you spend hours looking at it, and then you're circling those spots on a map, and like you say, it always looks different than what you looked at on Google Earth and what you looked at on a map. But you have a good idea that, yeah, this might be a good spot, but you come up with not just one spot, you come up with multiple spots and multiple backup plans, so you know where your next spot is. So you don't put all your eggs in one basket and go, this is a spot I'm going to hunt, and then you get in there and go, well, this is no good, now where do I go? And now you're trying to do map study and map research on the hunt. It just doesn't work as well. And so you came up with a game plan, circled multiple different spots, and the first two didn't pan out. And another thing you did is, in that country, there's a lot of road hunters, and if they aren't road hunters, they're day hunters, where they're hiking from their truck and hiking back. Nobody's backpacking in that country. I mean, me and you might be the first two guys that ever backpack in eastern Montana, but that getting away, getting farther back, accessing further country, that was a total key to your success in finding that buck. But man, kudos to you.
It's really easy over there to really kind of to fall into the line like most of the residents do over there, and that's just hunt off the road. Because there's bucks, and you're going to see bucks just glassing from your truck, or just putting a mile off the trail or off the road, and you're going to see bucks, and you're going to have opportunities at bucks, maybe 3.5-year-old bucks or whatever, and a lot of people, I think, get tempted, and they just don't put those blinders on to get into those key areas where you're going to find a buck that can kind of outlive that traffic and get beyond that. And most people tend to shoot those mid-range bucks, and they're happy with it, and they think that's kind of all there is. But yeah, like you said, I've never seen a spike out camp over there. I've never seen anybody, treat it like backcountry and go in. It's all truck camping or hunting from the road, or hunting from campgrounds and stuff like that. So I never seen it.
Yeah, and so a good tip for high pressure areas where there are a lot of roads cut in is just, think outside the box. Think of a different approach that's different than everybody else is doing. And I've had that same thing where I've hunted eastern Montana. I probably got 100 days in that country. But I had that same template for success that you ran, and I hunt with my bow over there during rifle season, but man, I chased some really good, heavy, older age class bucks. And then, I ended up harvesting a decent buck. Wasn't quite what I was after, but I went back over with my dad the next weekend, and he was able to kill a buck that was aged at 6.5 years old. Now those are the bucks that we're chasing and looking for, and he was a same way, like you say, not a typical muley at Eastern Montana. He was heavy horned, black horns. He was living in a burned area, but just a gorgeous buck, and not the typical 3 to 4 year old bucks that you see cruising those roads in a mile off the road. But man, good for you. Like you say, you almost got to have belief that you're going to find one of those older age class deer. You make your game plan and stick to it. Multiple backup plans. Did your map research. Just an awesome buck. I'm super impressed.
Yeah, it's fun, man. And like I said, every time I go over there, I'm really hard pressed to is it going to be Northwestern or is it going to be Eastern Montana that I go for this year? And this year I really wanted to challenge myself in that country to try to get one of those old gray face bucks, and it worked out. Now next year I don't know, it might be Northwest Montana that sucks me in, and I've come to love that low density area where you just don't find hunters up in that Northwest country very much, at least that I've seen. And because like you said, it's really tough up there. It's cliffy and it's thicker, and it's not as nice to hunt as it is in Eastern or even Middle Montana, where, you got a lot easier access to travel and hit ridges and just cruise country. And it just that's not the case in Northwest Montana. But, I've really come to love just seeking out those big heavy horn suckers that they just grow old and die back in that country, and nobody really sees them, and nobody really wants to spend the time in those small little patches where you could get lucky and get onto a real bruiser.
No, you're so right. Yeah, I'm the same way. I never know which way to go, to hunt the mountains or hunt the plains, or I never know what's my best chance. But I'm like you. I love hunting those heavy horned, big mature deer, like you killed in Eastern Montana, but they're more common, in Northwest Montana, in that tough, rugged country. They grow big, heavy, gnarly bucks in there, and so I'm drawn to that as well. And like you say, I have a hard time picking which direction in my state I'm gonna drive and I'm gonna hunt, because you just never know, what's gonna be your best chance and your best chance for a big deer.
Yeah, every time. I mean, I can't pass up a taxidermist guy over there in Montana. I just got to swing in and look. And, you swing into some guys on the Western front there, Northwest and all that. And, man, you're seeing some bruisers, some really old tanks that have just, older age class bucks and heavy dark horns. And, you get on the eastern side and you see a lot of bucks. The rafters are filled with bucks, but it's usually a thinner horned, lighter horned, and you just don't get those age class bucks as often. So it's really a much higher challenge to find one on the east side. But I think your challenge kind of, it's just the same in the Northwest corner as it is. Just finding a buck up there is a challenge. So completely different, but.
Yeah, no, it sure is. Well, and, you sound like mass makes the buck or makes the bull, doesn't it? When they're massive or heavy, it doesn't matter if they don't score as much as another buck or another bull. For me, when they're massive like that's a true trophy to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've got a story that I was chasing this buck here in Washington one year, and he was full rut. He was going crazy. He was knocking off smaller bucks, and had this other really good buck come in, and just a really nice big, I think he was a 5 or a 5x6, and just a beautiful buck. But you could tell he was a younger buck. And this bigger buck, he was just an old regress, and really cool dark horns on him, and just a way bigger body. And man, I opted to go for that one, and that's the one I ended up getting. And he was just heavier. He just had a lot more character to him. And yeah, he didn't score as well, but just, man, for me, that was a much better trophy to get that old regress than it was that younger buck, for sure.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah, well, you've had a ton of success over the years, and I know you're going to have a ton more success coming up. You're just doing everything the right way, and adventure seeker, and always keeping yourself in good health and good fitness. I'm just super impressed by what you've done, and we have to keep in touch. I want to do one of these train to hunts, and guys, if you get a chance, check out his podcast. I'm a huge fan. Hunt Health. Oh gosh. Put me
Hunt
on the
Harvest
spot.
Health.
Oh, gosh dang it. Sorry, Ryan. Yeah, Hunt Harvest Health. It's an awesome podcast, and you and your wife do a great job of getting information out there and really fill a good niche in the hunting community. So go check out his podcast, and then you can also find him. He's on Instagram, where I found him as Stealthy Hunter, and he's got
Yep,
a great
SDH.
Instagram page. So go check it out. Yeah, and you're like me. You're new to Instagram within the last year or two, right?
Yeah. My wife hooked me up with that mess. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
mess, but it's good though, right?
I love it now, man. I was a tough one to get involved with it, but now I love it. I mean, it's just introduced me to so many cool people, and I really see a lot of opportunity here to talk to younger guys that are just getting into it. And I just love answering questions from guys that want to know about gear or tactics or, areas or just anything. It's pretty cool how it works out. And I think it's a great source. I've been doing this a while, and I love sharing information, and it seems like this is about the best way I've found to do that with younger guys.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I was banging rocks for a long time and finally joined social media, but yeah, it's been one of the best things I've done. Like you say, you can reach so many other guys and you're able to, share a lot of your pictures and share information, a lot of your success from Nevada came from guys sharing information and I think you put that information right back out in the world and in the hunting community and just like I do, I'm always willing to answer questions and willing to help and especially guys that are out there that are willing to work hard and trying to gain information and get better and be a better hunter. And so, yeah, no, I really like the Instagram too. So I'm glad you're on there. I'm glad I'm able to connect with you. I want to keep in touch with you and I want to have you on again, in the future. You're just a wealth of information. There are so many good tips and tactics in this podcast. So, thanks a bunch, Ryan. I really appreciate it, man.
Hey, yeah. Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Man, what I tell you guys, that was a great podcast there. Ryan Lampers just did a super job and good conversation all the way through and just full of tips and tactics. Go check Ryan out. Stealthy Hunter on Instagram and then his podcast. Gosh, it wasn't that great. I forgot the name of his podcast right in the middle of plugging it. Jesus. Sometimes I wonder about myself, just when you think you're getting down this podcasting, all of a sudden, you go to plug it in there and just my mind goes blank. I couldn't think of it, but he reacted quick and didn't seem like a big deal. But anyways, just typical for me. But yeah, go check him out. Hunt Harvest Health is his podcast. It's a great podcast, and Ryan's just a super guy. And if you liked him on Eastman Elevated, make sure you reach out to him and let him know. These guys that are coming on, these guys are sharing more information than they share in other places. I'm picking their brain about specifics and which places they're hunting and how they're being successful. And we're sharing all that information over the airwaves. I mean, Ryan's given away all his secrets to what makes him successful, So, if you do like him on Eastman's Elevated, nothing helps me out more than reaching out to him and say, hey, Ryan, you were great on that podcast, or thanks for sharing. Make sure that he knows that he's reaching people out there. But another episode in the books, episode 21. Starting to get the hang of this, other than remembering people's podcasts and information. But other than that, things are going good. So I hope you guys have a good rest of the week. I'll check in with you next week.